So this is going to be a video on how to make this particular face mask. I designed this pattern based on a number of different things I was being told by a couple of different people who need non-medical face masks. These face masks are basically being used by people who are maybe someone who's got either allergies or is sick, and they want to keep their mouths covered so that they're not spitting any liquids or particles anywhere. So that's the point of this mask. It isn't really something that is medically needed, but it is for those people who want a washable face mask. The nice thing about this is it's made out of 100% cotton, a good quality cotton like you have in your quilting stash, and it is made up with some very simple materials. We have this is 1/8 inch wide elastic, so it's very simple. Most of us have this sitting in our stash somewhere. It has a pocket that you can put filtration types of things in it. So that's the fact that it's got an open pocket through the whole thing. So it's actually several layers. It is pleated so that when you put this on, and there, that's what it looks like on. It also has a little slot inside here for you to use for putting some piece of thin metal that can be, then it can actually go ahead and wrap around a person's nose. I have a very small nose, so this isn't really a big problem for me, but if you want to keep it closer to the face, that's a really needed part of this. So we have the pattern that I made up right here, and that is available on Facebook as a document. I created it as a picture. Now, if you print this out on 8.5 by 11 paper, what you'll find is that this top edge right here is where you're going to cut it off. For one side, we've got a fold of fabric. That's what this means. That means a fold. And then the other side will cut off at this dotted line. See, it says cut line for side 2. And this is the cut line for side 1. So the piece you're going to cut is going to be 8.5 inches wide by 16.25 inches, 16.5 inches. So you're going to have this pattern piece, but you can go ahead and pre-cut your fabric out right now if you want to. Again, the piece is 16.5 by 8.5 inches wide. So this piece of fabric right here was cut to those dimensions. Then on one side, I turned 1/4 inch twice, and then I top stitched it. On this side of the fabric, I turned it under 1 inch twice, and then I top stitched it here. And now I'm getting ready to put in the tube for my metal piece that would rest on my nose. So what you're going to find for this part is you just need a piece of ribbon. You need something with finished edges so that you can make a tube. Most of the time what they're going to put through here is pretty thin, and as long as you don't make this casing really small, almost any kind of metal piece, something like a twist tie would even work. You can put that right in there and slide it in. And notice that I've got it about 1 inch away from both sides of the edges here, because you don't want to put it in your seam allowance because you'll close up the hole that you would slide that twist tie into. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to top stitch it at the bottom edge here and at the top edge, creating a tube that you can slide a twist tie into. So that's where we're going to start with. So you can see I top stitched right here and I top stitched right here. And so now there's a tube that my little piece of twist tie or whatever little bit of metal I'm going to use can slide right into that. So now what we have to do is we have to sew the two sides here so that we can create this folded mask and where there's a pocket. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we are going to turn this over. This is that strip I just sewed. Fold the 1-inch top stitched hem that I made, fold that down. Then bring up the 1/4-inch one so that this is folded in half now. So here you have it in half. If you want, this is a good place now to go ahead and pin your side seams. And your side seams on this are 1/2 inch. I wrote all the measurements on the pattern piece so that hopefully you will not get confused. But now I've got 3 pins in here on each side to hold it together. Start from the bottom fold line. And I back stitched at the top and the bottom with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So, by the way, trim your threads. This is going to be on someone's face, and they don't want to be tickled by all these little threads hanging around. That would be kind of mean, so don't do that. Let's, again, start at your folded side. All right, now once you've got that done, turn it to the right side. So you're going to push out the bottom down here. If you have a point turner, this would be a good time to use it. If you don't, if you're really careful and you know what you're doing, you can use your seam ripper. And what I'm doing is this 1-inch part now. See how it folds over top? So, you know what? Why don't you stop? Okay, so we're going to mark and see where this fold is. That's the fold down here at the bottom of your face mask. So now what we're going to do is I took this piece of paper, a second piece, and I trimmed out a little triangle out of each one of those so that I could really easily just get right in here and mark my spots. And these are going to denote either my fold line or the depth of my pleats. So I'm flipping it over to this side, making sure that I get the bottom lined up again, and then off I go, making my marks. And if you're wondering what I have folded down here, well, that's that part right here that I already folded out of the way. So we don't need that. So this is a friction marker. These iron away, so those marks won't stay on here after I get this done. We'll iron it again and that mark will go away. So if we go back to the pattern piece, notice it says A and it skips a line and goes to B. So we're going to go A to B. See how we have that little fold right there? I'm going to take my pins. I'm going to fold. There we go. There's one. Then the next one is C, which is the next line up. And that gets, again, we skip one. See, I'm getting nice little neat pleats in here. So there we go. These pins are going to really help hold it in place because it's kind of got a little bit bulky and thick now. And then we have the last one to do right here. And what you want to do when you do this last one, just fold it up to where that flap is. Don't go past it, just go to that spot because you don't want to cover up the flap in any way because that's where they have that opening so that they can go ahead and put filtration material in there if needed. So here we go. Now, the only thing I have left to do is we're going to sew down the sides. See how it's sewn? Right there, we top stitched it. It's about 1/4 of an inch away from the sides. And then the very last thing that you're going to do is put your elastic on. The elastic needs to come down to almost the bottom edge. I did several straight stitches and then I did a zigzag. Then I'm going to wrap this around. And again, we'll zigzag it and straight stitch it so it's really secure so that it ends up looking like this one. So there you go. So it's got zigzags and straight stitches to hold it in place. And notice that they're like 1/4 of an inch from the edge in the corners here. And that makes the completed side, that makes your completed face mask. It's done now. It's completed. The one thing that I didn't talk about is how long this ribbon was or how long these two particular pieces of elastic are. Well, the ribbon, remember it was 8.5 inches, that width of the fabric, but you want this to be a full 2 inches shorter or else it'll get caught in your seam allowances. So if you cut this one at 6.5 inches, if you need to fold it under, then because of the raw edges, if you use a piece of bias tape on here, you won't have to do that because it won't shred, it won't really fray or anything because it's inside a pocket. But if you are worried about that and you want to turn something under, then give yourself a little bit of extra to turn under here. But remember, you also don't want the wire getting caught on it. The last thing I can tell you is that the elastic pieces, because 1/8 inch wide elastic stretches so much, these pieces were cut at 5 inches. And that gave me about 3/4 of an inch here and 3/4 of an inch here, and then the rest to loop over my ear. So I think that that will give you everything you need to be able to do this project. If you have any questions, just go ahead and message me, do whatever you need. This is a free pattern. I'm not charging anything for it. If you live in the Bloomington area and you want some kits put together with all of the pieces and you're willing to sew them, right now I know a lot of places need these and we need as much help with sewing these as possible. So if you need a kit, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll put together as many kits as you need and you'll have it all set up and ready to go, and it'll be a little kit and you can just make them, and we'll be the drop-off point for these two and make sure they get to the people who need them. So thank you very much, and that's how to make a face mask.